Hi guys, welcome back to AgCredit's Basics of Borrowing. We're going to give it a few minutes, let some people get joined on here, and we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Just a reminder as we're waiting, if you all have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message, make a comment, however you want to get it to us, and we'll answer it as quickly as we can. Everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome back. This is AgCredit's Basics of Borrowing. We're covering the 5 C's. My name is Dan Strayer. I'm a loan officer here at AgCredit. Been here about 2 years, been in the farm credit system about 5 years. I'm joined today with Willie Wilson.
Willie Wilson, I'm a loan officer in Lexington with AgCredit. Been a loan officer with AgCredit for 9 years.
So last week we decided that we wanted to pitch in, help out. Everything's a little bit weird with coronavirus and schooling from home, so we decided that we were going to do our best and see if we could give something a little informational for high schoolers or college, and that really any borrower who's new to lending. So last week, Joe Goggin and myself kind of went over what a relationship with a lender can mean, and then we started with one of the 5 C's of character. So if you're watching this is the first time live, you can stop now. You can look on our Facebook to see the first video we have. You can also go to AgCredit Online. We posted it there. But today we're going to kind of jump on to the next one of capacity. I think you'll see a lot of things that from character really kind of roll together. I mean, beyond your credit score that we talked about, a lot of the gray areas kind of tie well within capacity. So I'll have Willie go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, so first we're going to talk about what capacity is. So as Dan alluded to, it's one of the areas that we look at that kind of ties things together. So first of all, capacity is repayment capacity. So it's the ability to repay. So it's something that we focus on and look at after the loan is made. Does this borrower have the cash flow that they need to meet their debt obligations as well as pay for all their expenses, living, taxes, etc. Generally speaking, we look at 3 years of historical earnings. That 3-year look back gives us a good idea of what someone's operation has done and what their existing structure allows them to do, meaning how much profit do they have to take on additional debt. We will sometimes also make projections on those earnings. If someone's buying real estate that gives them additional production capacity, we can say, okay, this additional farmland is going to allow them to produce X amount more number of whatever they're producing.
You want to start right into
Going to formulas?
formulas? Yep, so we've got a few that are just kind of the basic formulas that most lenders will use. We'll try and not do this too numbers heavy and make you do any math. There will not be a quiz, even though we do have one prepared if Joe wants to have one later. We'll start with the front ratio. So if you all can't read this, feel free to let us know. We can have it typed out. A front ratio is just going to be housing payments divided by total income. Typically, you're looking at this as a monthly ratio, and this just gives a good idea of how much of your income goes directly to your to your housing. So typically, industry standards are 28%. Some banks, depending, can go higher or lower. It just depends on their risk tolerance. But that's a good idea to kind of get started, and it's pretty universally used. Back ratio kind of takes another step farther, and it's all of your payments divided by your income. We looked at monthly or annually, and that just allows a bank to see how much of your income is dedicated to debt service. So that 36% is with the industry standard on that one, and that might seem very low. All of my payments, compared to what my income is, there's a lot left. But really, it wants to add in where family income, doesn't include your food, doesn't include utilities, stuff like that. This is looking at car payments, house payments, insurance. It really gives you a good idea of what you have available to service debt.
So these two ratios are also good if you're wondering, where do I stand today? Should I take on more debt if I wanted to? You can easily figure out these ratios for yourself. And if your back ratio is 10%, you can say, well, I stand a pretty good chance at being approved for another loan if that's something I want to do at this time. So it's kind of just a red light, green light situation that you can use for yourself to say, hey, is my cash flow where it should be?
Yeah, and these are going to be some ones that you will see for houses. Commercial banks use them pretty heavily. These aren't specific to the Farm Credit System. And then the next one is a little more Farm Credit System unique. Other banks do use them, but I know we use it a lot heavier than most commercial banks. That's a cash available to service debt. We also call it capital debt repayment capacity. The way you figure this out is farm income minus farm expenses. You add back non-farm income, so if you have an off-farm job, W-2 earning, and then you subtract out taxes and family living. And that really gives the available cash to service debt, and afterwards we'll look at what your projected payments will be. It gives us an idea of how much cash you have available to service any new debt. It kind of gives us just a wiggle room to play with. There are some other things that go into it, depreciation, but we're not going to get too deep into all of the ratios today.
So that bottom number is really important when you're looking at borrowing money to replace an asset that you currently have. If you've got a tractor that's broke down or old and needs to be replaced, the payments to make that tractor loan payment needs to come from the bottom, the profit that your operation produces on an annual basis. So a good thing to talk about too with repayment capacity analysis is record keeping. So when someone comes in to the office and they want to borrow money to buy a farm, we get those 3 years of taxes that we spoke about earlier. Those 3 years of taxes need to have accurate numbers going into them. And if you don't have accurate record keeping, then those numbers aren't good either. Another thing that happens sometimes is if someone hasn't prepared for right now, if you haven't prepared your 2019 taxes, we would be looking at 2018 earnings to make a loan decision, which can be very difficult and might not reflect what your operation currently is doing. You may be more efficient, have grown or paid off some debt since then. So if you've got your own records through a program like Outlook or something like that, not Outlook, QuickBooks, we can get those numbers from you, and that can help us make a loan decision that's better for everybody.
Yeah, and that's a big one for me, at least, that ties back to character. Someone who has a true financial picture of what their operation does, knows what the numbers are, knows what they need to be able to be profitable, knows where their risks are, and a lot of that can really tie in together well.
And having good, timely numbers for yourself makes you a better manager because you can make better decisions. If you want to lease some more ground, you know what your operating expenses are, what you currently do. You can apply those numbers to make better farm management decisions in the future as well.
For sure.
So it's a win-win. There's never a bad reason to have good records.
Yeah. Another note we had to talk about is taxes. Willie mentioned we use taxes a lot. Typically, we'll use a 3-year average on it. But one thing we kind of always have to tell borrowers is it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, you don't want to pay too much in taxes, but at the same time, we're completely dependent on what you reported the previous years. So it's an interesting one where I feel like we always have to go find that fine line that's right in the middle for everybody.
So something that a lot of the records that you all would keep that don't let us really nail down expense is the family living expense. And family living expense can be a big expenditure for a lot of families. So if you have records that you've kept that can pinpoint what your living expense is, that's sometimes better than letting us try to ballpark guess it as best we can.
Mm-hmm.
So another good reason, if your living expense could actually be projected lower than what we would assume it to be, it's easier to have better repayment analysis.
Yeah, one of the questions we get on is what are my payments going to be? And one note I have here to talk about is why buy, and whether the income comes from increased revenue or whether you're already basically going to keep operations the same. You want to touch on that a little bit, Willie?
Yeah, so like I talked about the tractor, for instance, if you're replacing a tractor, that tractor, you make money with tractor per se, but it's not something that's going to add profit or income to your operation. Whereas if someone's looking at buying additional real estate to expand their farming operation, we can take basically the level that you've operated in the past and figure out, based on every dollar you made, 75 cents of that was expenses. We can apply that ratio to your projected farm income to calculate how much additional income an asset could generate for you. And those type of calculations become critical in capacity analysis.
Yeah, and the big reason comes back to why buy. What is the reason for it? Do you have aging equipment? Is this going to help you be more efficient? Are you going to be able to do more? What's the real purpose behind it, or do you just want a shiny new tractor?
Right. Those are all very important considerations to make when considering taking on additional term debt.
So that's all we really had prepared. Courtney, do we have any questions?
Yes. The first question is, what if I just started my job 6 months ago?
I can take that one.
Sure.
So someone that is experiencing either income they didn't have in the past or at a higher level of income that wouldn't be reflected in their past tax returns, we can generally obtain documentation from that applicant that would allow us to include that level of income. Ideally, we've got 3 years that shows you've got steady income from that and you've been doing it for a while, but in certain circumstances we can use a new job to include repayment capacity.
Okay. Another question is, how do I know what I can afford?
So I think we've given some good tools to get an idea. With the front ratio and the back ratio are definitely something you can quickly do at your house. Another way is just looking at what your set bills are. Having a good QuickBooks or even just a budget in Excel. Knowing what you're spending money on and what you're bringing in can give you a pretty good idea of what your discretionary income is.
Right, and discretionary income being
How much you have to play with. What isn't already allocated to something, whether it's food, utilities, car payments, house payments, stuff like that. And even sometimes if you're looking at a new house or know what you're paying in rent, what the difference is, owning versus renting, some of that stuff, the difference is there. All right, that's all the questions we've got. I wanted to thank everybody. Obviously, we want to thank Courtney Bartenswager and Ben Robin are behind the scenes. We definitely couldn't get all of this up and running without them. Seems like everybody liked it. We got a lot of response from last week, and we'll keep plugging away. Next week, we're going to be looking at capital, so the third C. If anybody has any questions beforehand, feel free to send them in. It'll be really covering, capital positions, balance sheets, stuff like that. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed. Thank you.
stay safe.